Welcome back, YouTube. Thank you for tuning in. As always, I appreciate that. And this is a Vaporum review discussion video. I recently uploaded my review of the grid-based RPG Vaporum, and the review is actually quite polarizing because there are quite a few people that actually liked the review. I got around 25 thumbs up and 12 thumbs down. So it is sort of polarizing. And I wanted to address some of the comments, some of the topics that you guys have touched upon watching the review and have left messages, direct messages to me, messages at the Steam page where I did a review as well, or where I linked the review to YouTube. Now, okay, so let's start with the first topic, and that's somebody wrote to me saying that my video was basically a critique about the genre, the grid-based RPG genre, and not really about Vaporum, the game itself, which kind of boggles me because all the time I've been talking about Vaporum, but you can't look at Vaporum without looking at the genre where it's part of, right? It's part of the grid-based RPG genre. And that grid-based RPG genre is an old genre, right? This is a genre that was introduced somewhere in the early 90s of the last century, and Vaporum is a game that's part of that tradition, part of that genre. So I cannot just look at Vaporum, just the game itself, without looking back at the genre that it tries to be part of. You know, it tries to be part of that tradition of the grid-based RPGs. So when I talk about some of the old mechanics from the old days that were part of the RPG, you know, the grid-based RPG, um, that stuff is part of Vaporum as well, if you know what I mean. Like when I talk about the way that the corridors are designed, right? The way that you move through corridors going forward and back and left and right. You know, the biggest thing about these corridors way back in the day was the fact that everything kind of looks very similar going through the corridors. They look pretty boring, and they had to do with, I think, the limitations in hardware and software. You know, you just couldn't hand design all the tiles, all the textures on the walls. They were basically tunnels, right? They were tunnels that you went through. Now, when I talk about Vaporum, and when I say that Vaporum has that same kind of tunnel design, and that everything starts to look the same, and there isn't a huge variety in wall textures, that is a critique on the game Vaporum, because I think that nowadays I expect more from the design of corridors. I expect more and different tiles. I expect more and different textures on the walls. I expect that there is more decoration in the rooms and that they actually look like rooms that you can explore. Because this Vaporum just has corridors and rooms, but you never get the idea that you're actually in a research center. That's the whole idea behind Vaporum, is that you're in this metal tower, right? This metal tower where you go through, but it's basically a bunch of corridors. And nowadays, I don't think you can just do the same thing as way back when. Um, and way back when, in the old games, you also had to draw your own maps, right? Because there wasn't an auto map function, and that's an old mechanic. And in this new game, Vaporum, there is a map feature, which is great, but it still doesn't justify the fact that the corridors and the rooms are kind of boring in a way. You know, they're boring. You know, I just wanted to have a little bit more diversity in terms of design and how things look, because that influences the way that you perceive the game, whether or not you still think it's fun. If there's a good variety, it keeps the player engaged, it keeps you going, right? That's why I compared Vaporum with the old games and um, how it relates to these old games in the way that the corridors are designed. All right, so now let's talk about the puzzles, right? Somebody commented and said something like that the puzzles that I couldn't solve the puzzles, or that I criticized the game for having hard puzzles, but that I just couldn't solve them because I'm pretty dumb or something like that. I have no problem with hard puzzles, really. I don't. Maybe I'm dumb and I can't solve them easily, and that's okay. But I'm an average gamer, and but I do know to distinguish between a good puzzle and a bad puzzle. Now, I've spent 24 hours or even more, um, 24 hours playing Vaporum. And people who are commenting on my video have spent maybe 1 to 3 hours. I mean, the game is just out, right? So, and I got a Steam key in advance, so I've been playing a lot of it. So when I say that I've seen all the puzzles, I've played this game to the end, and I've restarted the game actually to try different things out. But the puzzles are actually, most of them are quite good. They're actually challenging, they're fun. But there are a bunch of puzzles that are just bizarre. They're just bizarre. And it's the one in the library. Once you get there, you know what I mean. The library puzzle is just stupid. And there are some more of these puzzles. And I know how to distinguish between a good puzzle and a bad puzzle, because a good puzzle, when solved, you think, huh, that makes sense. I should have thought of that, right? A bad puzzle, once you've solved it, it's like, oh, that was kind of random. That didn't make sense. I couldn't figure that out by myself. That's a bad puzzle. That's how I distinguish between a good and bad puzzle. Now, Vaporum is somewhat of a mixed bag with it. There are a good amount of good puzzles, decent puzzles, although there are a whole bunch of these crate shoving puzzles, and I don't really like them because they're overly used in the game. But there are a good amount of quite interesting puzzles, good variety of puzzles, and there are a bunch of really bad puzzles. And you know what I mean once you finish the game. Okay, so enough about the puzzles. Then let's talk about the combat, right? Okay. Combat in the old games was kind of floaty. It was kind of random as well. So in that way, the combat in Vaporum is sort of the same. It's kind of floaty. It's kind of random. Yes, there are visual clues that you're actually doing damage, but it's still random because they're just random numbers that appear above the enemy if you hit them, or if you've shot them. So it really is random. I can't explain it otherwise. And the thing is, and I've explained that in my video, that nowadays I expect that there is a combat system that actually gives you some feedback on what kind of enemy you're facing, if they're what the weaknesses and strengths are. The game actually sort of tells you that certain weapons are better used against certain enemies than others, but you never get the sense that that's actually the case. Also, when you get a gun, that's fun, but you get another gun and it should be a little better, but how can you tell when there's just random numbers? And sometimes you miss, and sometimes you hit something, and there's just, I mean, you do 100 damage, and then your better gun does 80 damage, and sometimes 200 damage. It's so random. And again, the visual clues are really very, I'd say, they are kind of indistinctable. They're not really there. I mean, they're there, but like there's a little splatter of blood on an enemy once you hit them with a gun or something. But that's just it. Sometimes they get stunned. They're thrown back. Yes, that's okay. But other than that, it's just kind of the same as in the old games, and it's sort of stuck in that old way of doing things. I wish it had something else to move the genre forward. Also, again, when you strike with a sword or something, you just see some vertical lines over the screen, like, or it's like when you shoot, you just see a kind of a little cloud of powder, like, and that's it, nothing else. And I think there are actually games where you see the gun or you see the sword or you see it swing, like even in the old games, like I don't know, the Elder Scrolls, the old games, the Elder Scrolls games, that you actually saw at least something moving around the screen that sort of resembled a sword or something like a. They should have done something with that, I think, just to give you an idea that you're actually shooting something or you're just hitting something, because they're just icons in your inventory. A gun, you find a new gun. Oh, it's a new gun. It's just a little different icon, but you can't tell. So, and I think it has a lot to do with time, the time that developers need to implement all that. Same goes for the design of the levels and the corridors. You need time to make it look distinctive. You need time to make it look handmade. So I can understand why a small team of developers just kind of went for a more of a copy-pasted design of things. And I'm okay with that to a certain extent, but that makes the whole thing a little just kind of same and sort of tedious after a while. After spending 24 hours, it starts to become a little tedious and dull. That's the only thing. It's what I said. And that doesn't mean I don't like the game. Really, I do like the game. I have said in my conclusion in the video that I think it's a sympathetic entry into the grid-based dungeon crawler genre. And it's fine, really, it's fine. Although I'm still waiting for the game that actually kind of pushes this genre forward, brings it into the here and now, and introduce new mechanics, and sort of tries to break away from the old ones, the boring corridors, the floaty combat, just that sort of thing. Again, I think it's a fine game, Vaporum. It's a fine game, but not a great game, in my opinion. That's my opinion. So hopefully this will give you a little bit of a backstory, a little bit more context, how my thought process was when reviewing the game. And yeah, so let me know what you think. And leave comments. We'll respond as much as I can. See you in the next video. Bye.